The night the police lights washed my driveway in red and blue, I was barefoot in swim trunks with a dripping garden hose in my hand. Like a white flag, I never planned to wave. 3 squad cars lined the curb on Juniper Lane, as if they had stumbled onto a cartel bunker. Blinds tilted open all up and down the block, and there in the glow stood the president of our HOA. Clutching color-coded binders, like they were holy texts, pointing at me and telling the officers I had threatened her over pool access protocols. By sundown, a detective would be photographing a hidden camera. They would pull out of my maple tree, and the board would vote to strip her power in front of everybody. But in that moment, I was just a guy who had said no and meant it, and that was apparently dangerous in Sierra Glen. My name is Mason Reed, 36, for years. I digitized county records before I started a small renovation business, which means 2 things. Became muscle memory for me, how property lines actually work and how official documents really look when they're clean. I am not a lawyer, but I read deeds the way some people read baseball. Box scores obsessively carefully with a pen. 2 years ago, I bought this place 4 bedrooms, a fig tree that throws fruit over the fence, and the reason I signed on the dotted line, a kidney-shaped pool tucked behind a 6-foot privacy fence, a little rock waterfall that sounds like rain when the wind is right. I checked the deed clause 3 times before closing and had a buddy in title search check it too. The pool and every improvement were private amenities attached to my lot, with no HOA easement. It wasn't paranoia, it was peace of mind. I paid for. The trouble announced itself at a block cookout. Paper plates, plastic forks, kids weaving around lawn chairs, old country on a Bluetooth speaker, and our new HOA president, Vivian Prescott, moving through my backyard like a realtor casing an open house. She stopped hard when she saw the waterfall. That tiny calculation flicker people get when they do math. With what isn't theirs, this is beautiful, she said. The community would benefit from access to amenities like this. I told her I loved sharing the view from my deck, and only from my deck she gave me that diplomatic laugh with a period at the end. And after that, the paper started arriving letters on HOA letterhead, urging me to open my pool for limited wellness hours. Nice words like neighborly and inclusive, then softer threats like failure to cooperate may lead to further action. I wrote back politely. The pool is private, under the deed. Thank you. At the next meeting, she gave a speech about underutilized resources and health equity. She mailed a survey asking a trick question about equal access to aquatic facilities within Sierra Glen, and a lot of folks thought she meant the community pool by the clubhouse. That we all pay for, the number she blasted around was 58% in favor the week after that. I woke to a laminated sign zip-tied to my gate. Sierra Glen Wellness Hours, Monday to Friday, 10:00 a.m. to 4:00 p.m. I took it down, changed the lock, sent a courteous email with photos, and thought we were done. We were not. 2 mornings later, at 6:12 a.m., my motion camera pinged. I walked onto the patio in a t-shirt and slippers and found Vivian inching along my fence with a tape measure, like a cat burglar who pays dues. Good morning, I said, trying not to let the sarcasm do a cartwheel safety inspection. She replied, "Insurance matters." "You're on my property," I told her. "Please leave, or I will pursue legal action." Her face twitched at legal. Like I had said, bomb. She hustled away. And 3 hours later, the squad cars arrived, Sergeant Cole. Calm, the kind of guy you'd trust to carve the turkey at Thanksgiving, told me they'd received a call about a hostile threat related to pool access and asked if I was Mr. Reed. "That's me," I said. The only thing I threatened today was the filter. If it clogs again, Vivian stepped around him with a binder labeled Pool Access Non-Compliance and read off phrases like evidence of intimidation and pattern of behavior. The way she said, work of the board, you'd think she chaired the Supreme Court. Do you have something we can look at? Mr. Reed, the sergeant asked. I nodded. I have a 6:12 a.m. video of Ms. Prescott on my side of the fence with a tape measure, my voice asking her to leave. No shouting, no threat beyond legal action, and a photo of the unauthorized sign on my gate. We watched by the hose reel, the audio clean. My voice steady, the tape measure glinting like a prop in a heist movie. The sergeant exhaled through his nose and gave Vivian a patient look. Ma'am, threatening to sue for trespass isn't a criminal threat. It's generally what people are supposed to do. Vivian's jaw tightened, and she pulled a new folder from her tote. Different playbook, the PUA. The pool sits 2 feet into association common area, she said, handing over photocopied plats with county stamps. You can enforce private rules on private land. This is not that. The officer passed me the pages, and my old job woke up in my head. The county stamp said 1999. But the font was a typeface our recorder didn't adopt until 2006. The surveyor license number matched a man whose retirement cake I had eaten in 1998, and the page sequence numbers were in the wrong corner. These are not right, I said. Sergeant, the formatting is off the year, and typeface don't match. That license belongs to someone who left the profession before this date. We can check the county site right now. He studied the sheets, and his posture shifted. He radioed for a detective and asked Vivian where the documents came from. She folded her arms and said she had enhanced the historical records for clarity. That's not clarity, I said. That's making the page say what you wish. It said while we waited. I printed my deed clause and opened the public records portal on my laptop. The detective arrived with a camera bag and the face of a man who has seen every flavor of nonsense. He listened, photographed the pages, then asked Vivian what enhanced meant. She talked about formatting and correcting obvious mistakes and the spirit of community, then casually admitted she installed a small safety camera to monitor my pool because of what she called elevated risks. Where is that camera? He asked. And she tried to dodge its short version, 15 feet up in my maple, in a green casing aimed squarely over my fence. The detective photographed the device, bagged it, and asked me to email the sign photo, the dawn video, and the letter trail. Vivian pivoted to optics, telling 2 neighbors. I was selfish that 20 families could enjoy the space if I stopped hoarding. I kept watering the wisteria. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not take the bait. That afternoon, our group chat exploded. Someone used 6 siren emojis, and it still felt small. An emergency HOA meeting was set for that evening, and by 7, the clubhouse was full enough that the folding chairs looked tired. Vivian sat at the center table with 2 board members, who wore the faces of people reconsidering their life choices. She banged a tiny wooden gavel. She must have ordered online and tried to sound official under Article 12. The president retains executive discretion to act in good faith. For community benefit, any misunderstanding around documents is covered by that provision. From the second row, Tom. Nguyen, our treasurer, raised his hand like a student who wanted out of class. Article 12 covers mulch over edges and emergency fence painting. He said it does not cover felonies. The room buzzed. Vivian tried to block me. Mr. Reed is not on the agenda. I stood anyway and held up a slim folder as a homeowner and the person whose property was surveilled. I have standing to speak. Rita Morales. Our secretary nodded and said, "Go ahead, I didn't grandstand." I walked it like a checklist, the deed clause, the 6:12 a.m. video, the unauthorized sign, the plat inconsistencies. Any first-year clerk would flag the camera aimed at my pool, and then I laid out the cost. If the HOA defends forged filings, if it endorses surveillance of a private yard, if it invites suits for trespass, harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We are not debating neighborliness. We are discussing reserve funds, getting bled into attorneys, and every owner paying higher insurance. You could feel the center of gravity move not into my folder, but away from her binders. She reached for the survey again. The community voted for access. She said 58%. Tom adjusted his glasses. That survey asked about aquatic facilities in Sierra Glen. He said that means the community pool. We all fund, not Mason's backyard. Rita leaned into her mic and said, "I move for a vote of no confidence," Tom said, second before the sentence finished breathing. The vote happened so quickly, even the guy stacking cookies stopped chewing. 5 board members. The gavel that had been theater landed like a real instrument, and for once Vivian's face drained, and then flushed. "You can't do this," she said. The wellness initiative was supposed to be my legacy. Tom closed his folder and said, "Then your legacy is the bylaws. We write to make sure this never happens again." She gathered her papers with hands that weren't steady. No one clapped. This wasn't a pep rally. It felt like setting a bone. The legal part moved on its own. Rails, the detective, filed his report. The county clerk confirmed the plats had been altered, and not by anyone with authority. The prosecutor brought charges for filing false documents and unlawful surveillance. There was a hearing where I barely spoke. Vivian took a deal. 18 months, probation. A $7,500 fine, 250 hours of community service, and a restraining order that drew a 100-foot circle around my home. The judge said it clean. Forging government records to force a private amenity into public use is not community service. It is a crime. That is the precise spot. A lot of stories fade to confetti. Not mine. I didn't throw a pool party. I didn't high-five. My neighbors in the hallway. I walked to my truck, put my hands on the wheel, and let the anger I hadn't used slide out in one long breath. I wasn't angry about paper. I was angry because someone convinced herself that my boundary was selfish, that my no was immoral, that ends invented means. And here's the part that might sting. A few neighbors still said they wished I had shared anyway. The next afternoon, an anonymous flyer appeared in my mailbox on pink paper that smelled like toner. Share the water. Arguing good people open their gates. I didn't tear it up. I slid it into the kitchen drawer with the painter's tape and batteries. Because this isn't about whether I'm generous. It's about whether a system lets someone with a title rewrite what you own. I'm not a villain for wanting quiet. I'm not a hero for enforcing a deed. I'm a person who likes to swim at dusk, without an audience, who believes lines drawn legally and clearly matter, because they keep peace when personalities don't. You know what I mean? On good days, I call it being a grown-up. On bad days, I call it survival. The twist for anyone who missed it is simple. She didn't just call the cops, she tried to move a property line with a printer. And when that didn't work, she stared over my fence with a camera. She hid in my tree. The binders and the buzzwords were window dressing, the strategy was pressure. Until I said yes, the strategy was make the no look like a crime. And that is what chilled me more than sirens. Because if you can convince a crowd that majority desire outruns a deed, if you can sell the idea that your vote is a key that fits every door on the street, what chance does a quiet person have? I held the line with proof instead of volume, but I also know not everyone has a background that lets them spot a forged stamp from 20 feet. Not everyone has footage at dawn, or a detective who actually shows up. A lot of people cave, just to make the noise stop, yeah. That happened to a neighbor of mine, 2 streets over, when they pushed him to remove a shed that was in compliance. He folded because it was cheaper than fighting. That's the part of these stories. Folks don't see on community Facebook threads the messy human math behind every tidy line about being a good neighbor. If you want the cinematic big moment, it lands exactly when the judge speaks, and the pen scratches, and the bailiff slides papers across a wooden table. That's where the arc closes for me. That's where justice lands. But I won't pretend the conversation ends there, because I still jog by the clubhouse and wonder how many times the word community gets used as a crowbar. I still look up when a drone hum rises somewhere in the cul-de-sac. I still think about the neighbors who meant well and signed a survey they didn't fully read. And I remind myself to be kind to them, because bad wording and good intentions are a dangerous combination. I remind myself to keep the gate locked and the email receipts clean, and to wave across the street. Even when I'm tired, I remind myself that boundaries aren't the opposite of generosity. They are the shape that makes generosity real. So this is where I leave it. Not with confetti in the backyard, but with quiet air and the waterfall sounding like rain. With my yard being my yard. Again. With a question hanging that I honestly want you to answer. When does neighborly end and entitled begin? When does sharing slide into surrender? If your town voted tomorrow to share private amenities for community health, would that be democracy or daylight robbery? Have you ever been told? Your no made you a bad person? Tell me where you're watching from, what time it is there, and how you draw the line between generosity and justice hit. Like if you think institutions should never be allowed to rewrite a deed, drop a comment. If you disagree and tell me why, I can take it. We can argue like neighbors who plan to see each other again. And if you've got an HOA story of your own, good or bad, I want to hear it. Because when the lights fade and the sirens die and everybody goes back inside, it's our words that keep the street livable.